Okay. Looks like people are here and it's time to start. Can the clerk call the roll? Would you call the roll?
Harper. Here. Kurtz. Petrie. Here. Schrader. Here. Esri. Here. Berkson.
Here.
Langenheim.
Sort of.
Quorum is present.
What? The quorum is present. Thank you. Okay, can we have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay. Any comments?
Yes, my name is misspelled.
Please note we have a misspelled name. Berkson, what'd they do? B?
No, B-E-R-G.
Well, okay. I guess it happens every now and then. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? As amended. Okay, accepted. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any commentary? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda has been approved. I have 2 public input. Is there any more? Okay. Susan Forsyth.
My name's Susan Forsyth, and I live in Homer, Illinois. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'm running for village trustee for Homer. The impetus for that was the Bulldog mine that may or may not come to Homer. And it's a really big issue in Homer. A lot of people, I'd say probably 90% of the people in Homer don't want this mine. And our village board voted to sell them treated water as a measure to get the mine in to the area, but there's several concerns that go along with it. One of them being, if the mine comes, you know, Homer's in a pretty dire position as far as finances go, and if they lose more tax revenue, frankly, I don't know what's going to happen to Homer. But my point being, Sunrise isn't going to sell coal. You can read their SEC filing. They're not going to sell coal in Illinois, which means that Illinois is not going to see any tax revenue from it. And neither will Homer's schools. And I kind of feel like my property taxes are high enough out there because of the school. And I don't feel like, and a lot of people from Homer don't feel like the board represented them. So I'm here tonight to ask the Champaign County Board to represent Homer, to try and make this as difficult as possible for Sunrise to set up shop in Homer, to, you know, outside of Homer in their 9 square mile proposed area. It's not something that's needed. You know, if any one of you can point me to a town that has had a coal mine in it that thrives after the coal mine is left, I'm open for that. But as far as I know, one of those does not exist. And my fear is that Homer's going to eventually turn into that. I mean, we're well on our way to being that kind of a town, unfortunately. And finally, with their decision, they made it clear that the board and the mayor made it incredibly clear that the decision was made for financial purposes only. I mean, there were other ways that they could have come up with the extra revenue. I mean, without ruining the land and disregarding the future of farm production, which is Illinois' #1 thing. You know, why you would sacrifice that for a finite amount of time is just beyond me. And so I ask of you, the county board, to make this as difficult as possible for Sunrise to set up shop in Homer, because, you know, I think you guys are really our last line of defense. You know, obviously our board didn't stand with us, so I ask you to maybe stand with us.
Smith. Suzanne Smith. I live in rural Homer. My husband and I farm land both in Champaign and Vermilion County, and some of the land that we farm is adjacent to the proposed Bulldog mine as well, and we are concerned about this mine that would be coming to our town. I'm here tonight to bring you some thoughts about some suggestions as an inclusion list as you consider the issue of Sunrise Coal this evening. It is potentially for the pumping of groundwater, for the potable water supply, and for the surface water, for the raw water supply as well. Understand this, I got short notice on this meeting. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but hopefully a beginning of a discussion that I hope you will continue to have. I'm asking ELUC tonight that you would establish minimum water levels, the needs in the Salt Fork River to support existing uses, especially in consideration of existing water quality impairments, the binding TMDL, and potential for the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District effluent to be sold before discharge to the Salt Fork water system. I also ask that you evaluate the impact of the Salt Fork with water withdrawals on the Salt Fork conditions, flows, and the existing uses in stream and for downstream segments. Oakwood has its drinking water supply from this river. There is recreation, which includes Camp Drake, scouts, canoers, hikers, hunters. Aquatic life, including the sensitive fish and mussel species. You're probably aware of the fact that there are federally endangered mussels that were recently reintroduced that have existed in the Salt Fork in the past, and they were, Salt Fork was chosen out of other rivers in our nation for that site. Consider the adjacent landowners and how it will impact them. I also ask that you evaluate the impact of the Salt Fork withdrawal on adjacent groundwater conditions. We don't know for sure, but we know that the water is moving through the ground, and we're talking about some significant water withdrawals here for a coal mine. Consider the supplies and the existing uses. There's potable water supply wells. There's recharge to connected community groundwater supplies as well. I also asked the Champaign County Board that as a county level that you consider the economic impact of this, and Susan addressed that a little bit as it impacts Homer initially, but there is the broader aspect of how it can affect the county as well, including but not limited to taking farmland out of production and the change to our tax base, a decrease in the localized population and the abandonment of homes, the degradation of the county and the township roads from additional coal mine truck traffic, residual air contamination, water and soil from fugitive dust, dropped coal, runoff and discharges, lost economic development due to the presence of a coal mine and the use of water resources. Just briefly, I will let you know that I have been and visited around the Carlisle mine, which is the poster child of Sunrise Coal to this mine that's proposed in Homer. I have seen the degraded roads. I have smelled the sulfur in the air. I have seen the large impoundment walls that are degrading and that are adjacent to open waterways. So I ask that you seriously consider this issue and continue this dialogue. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would maybe ask Deb Busey to give us a quick update on Mr. Kurtz and how he's doing.
He's doing well. He went home on Monday and I think is improving every day. He intends to be back at work next Monday and in fact has a 6-hour workshop for workforce development that he's planning on attending.
What happened to him?
I did send an email out to all the board members. He suffered from pancreatitis last Wednesday evening, Thursday morning, and had surgery on Saturday and was hospitalized from Thursday until Monday.
My email isn't functioning at the moment.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Item 7A, final minor amendments to Land Resources Management Plan. Can I have a motion on that?
Second.
Okay. Anybody have anything to say about it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Okay. 7B, case number 733-AT-12- final recommendations for zoning ordinance text amendment to add requirements for agricultural drainage contractor facility. Can I have a motion on that one?
Second.
Any comments on that one? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7C, annual update of activities, 4-12-12-3-31/13 for the National Pollutant Discharge Emanation System, NPDES, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, Stormwater Discharge Permit with Illinois Environment Protection Agency, parent IEPA. Can we have any second?
Second.
Does anybody have anything to say about this? Say away.
Thank you. I just want to double check. I believe it is mentioned that this will put us completely up to date and get us in good standing.
We're going to beat the deadline on this one, so we'll actually be a little ahead of the curve on this one.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We have 2 items to be received and placed on file by ELUC committee to allow for 30-day review period. Can we have a joint motion for both of them? You want to separate them? Okay, well then for the first one. Case number 734-AT-12- change requirements for contractor facility. It's discussed on page 3940 of the agenda. Can I have a motion on that?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item B, case number 743-AT-13- allow variances from municipal subdivision regulations for rural water district, water treatment plant, and related facilities.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on this one? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask Mr. Hall if he has any update on any movement toward any agreement between the entities.
I have no update on that. I did want to make sure that committee members saw the email I sent out. The ZBA did recommend enactment of this case last Thursday unanimously. But I don't have any update on the 2 parties.
Okay. Any further discussions or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Well, even a cripple can get through this meeting. And I am a cripple, believe me, Miss Smith. Okay, monthly reports. Do we have a monthly report? Okay, could we have it? Or do you want to say anything about it? Anybody have any questions about the monthly report? Have a motion to put it on, accept and put on file.
Second.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Other business. We have 3 items submitted for discussion. The first one is discussion amending the Champaign County zoning ordinance to add post-construction noise assessment of wind farms. Anybody have anything to say about this?
Okay. Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. I'm the one who brought this up. I brought this up previously when we were looking at a number of amendments on the zoning ordinance. And the reason for bringing it up, again, for us to have a discussion about and maybe figure out a way of moving towards some type of amelioration on the post-construction noise situation. I've been reading more and more about it, and do want to lay out the fact that what I've read indicates that it is a bit hard to do the testing once the project is completed, because you would have to be there for what I'm gathering is longer periods of time, or consistent slices of time as the winds change and the turbines move to measure the variations of noise under different circumstances. So what has been suggested in some of the documents that I have been reading is the importance of the distance of the siting of the wind turbine in relationship to any living unit. And that has been on the table for discussion. I believe our ordinance is at 1,200 feet. Is that correct, John?
That's correct.
Correct, okay. Some things I've read are much further. Some communities have used that as the way to solve the issue and have given sort of a range. In other words, if the placement will be near a residential site, then there's a variation of the distance there. If it's not near residential sites, then it can be in the minimum. If you set a range of say 1,200 to 1,500, I'm just picking some numbers. So what I wanted to do is put this on the table and hear some discussion on this. And if we feel it's important enough to come to a point of putting forth an amendment, that we do so before we have any more wind farms come forward to be considered within the county. In other words, do it ahead of time. And other things that I've been reading about is the turbines have been getting larger and larger. The kilowatt hours are getting increasing in amount. The design of the propellers is improving, so the noise factor that was so significant, say 15 or 20 years ago, is becoming more minimized, but that is getting somewhat countered because they're getting larger and taller. And so these are some of the things that I wanted to put on the table for discussion and conversation.
Anybody wish to respond to that? Okay, item B. Whoops.
I will. Now, let me get this straight, Patsy. Are you saying that obviously we can't do anything with the current wind farms for noise remediation, but future wind farms, are you saying that to remediate it we need to move the setbacks further back? And what have you read that 1,500 feet and another 300 feet I can't see would do much for reducing noise levels?
Well, I'm not the engineer. I'm just reporting what I've been reading in the studies that have been
Oh, I understand.
done. But, well, and some of them are a half a mile, so that's a much greater distance. But noise is a factor. We know that. And what I am wondering if we shouldn't be considering, how do we create the range of distance from where there are living units in the placement of a turbine to minimize that as best we can. And originally, I thought the best way to handle the noise was testing it after the project is completed. The more I read about that, the more I do understand that that's a really difficult thing to do because of the variations of the environment. When the wind comes from different directions, the speed of the wind and things like that. So that makes that a little bit difficult. So what communities are going to is increasing the distance.
What I remember when we discussed the original ordinance was something, and I didn't go with a group. There was a group that went over to McLean County to that site, and I think that a lot of county board members felt that, because I think we took a bus over there, I believe, that with the wind speed, that the wind itself kind of masks the sound. Now, I understand that there's a constant whoosh sound, and our ears tend to pick that up. Our ears tend to pick up patterns, I guess our brains do, but our ears pick up that pattern or sends it to our brains. So instead of hearing the wind constantly, the gusts go up and down, there's also the whoosh sound. And I understand that's part of the reason, that's part of the problem with the sound that's so close to the houses, that it's somewhat distracting only because it's a constant sound. It's a constant whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Is that the way you understand it? And why I bring that up is I'm not sure a half mile, unless you've read something different, can change that sound with any kind of a substantial difference.
Well, I'm going on the documents that I've been reading about this before I brought it up, and more distance does help it. There are actually two sounds: the sound in the cell and the sound of the blades. And the cell sound isn't as significant as the blade sound is, and that does vary though depending on the direction the wind is coming from as the head turns, the speed of the wind. So those sounds are not constant. It is a big variable. So what we need to think about is how disturbing that is to any residents within a certain distance of where the turbine gets placed. And the residents are there first, so we have to think about that aspect of it. It's not to discourage wind farms coming into the county. It is to maybe be ahead of any noise issues that eventually might come to the county board, because once they're placed and then the problems, demonstrate themselves, and then we have to contend with that, and it's much easier to think about how we can maybe increase the distances sufficiently so that we prevent this from becoming a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just a few observations. I'll preface it by saying I do not live around or farm around windmills, so their type of noise, the noise they emit, I'm not familiar with. But I do live out in the country, and noise can travel a very long way depending on the circumstances. So as John, I think, was kind of getting to, I'm not sure how far the setback would have to be to totally eliminate the noise. Now, granted, this is a still night, and obviously on a still night, maybe the windmills aren't going to be turning, but I've been in my house in the winter, the windows, doors are locked, and next thing I know, I'm saying, what's that noise? And it's a train, and that train can be 4, 5, 6 miles away, rumbling through the night, blowing its horn, and I can hear that. So I don't know how far away you would have to site these to totally eliminate the noise. And I'm not speaking to the type of noise it does either. I mean, John said, and I believe I've read some of that too, that you do tend to pick up the patterns. But I sit here and think, when I do my jobs as an electrician, I get in town sometimes and I get into houses where they're backed up right to the interstate. And me, myself, I'm like, how can they stand to live here with that interstate roaring in their backyard day after day after day, night after night after night? Well, they do. They live there. They put up with it. They adapt to it. Again, I'm not speaking to there's maybe differences in the types of noise, but these windmills that we've been reading about here are relatively new to both Vermilion and Champaign counties, the same wind farm, California Ridge Wind Farm. Not saying that there isn't something to be said about the noise and trying to reduce it, but over time, will people adapt and get used to it? Those are just observations.
I live within less than 2.5 miles of the wind farm. I have not heard anybody complain about the noise at all, or nobody said anything to me. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not an advocate of wind farms. They're not as efficient as everybody says, and if we have to subsidize them with federal tax dollars, I'm not a big proponent of it, but that's another point. But I have not heard any complaints on the noise factor as of this date. So, like I said, I see them every day, so.
Well, I'm going to jump over the traces here. Get yourself on Google, call up wind farms, noise, and you'll get a lot of discussion. And on both sides of the matter. And I won't go beyond that. I do have some constraints. I'm supposed to be neutral. Okay, any further comments? Okay, item 10B, discussion. Appropriateness of supporting resolution concerning environmental issues connected to possible coal mine in Vermilion County. Do any of you want to say anything about that?
These are mine, so I asked for this to be on the agenda based on what we did in the past in relationship to the county board. Actually, before I was on the board, passed a resolution expressing the concerns about the Clinton landfill and the PCBs and the Clinton landfill. So we've laid some precedents already in expressing concerns for something that is, well, actually outside our county, but it does affect our aquifer. This is in our county, and we've had several people speak to it this evening. My basic arguments track along two ways in which in public participation they touch on these. One is the environment, and the other is economic. And the environment aspect has to do, the argument that I'm making principally has to do with the lack of consistency of flow of the Salt Fork. And I thought it was really convenient. Not that I had anything to do about it, but the fact that on April Fool's Day in the News Gazette was the article about the officials seeking to relocate mussels, and one of the rivers that they are relocating the mussels is into the Salt Fork. And they had been there previously, and this is in addition to what had been there previously, and that becomes very important in relationship to consistency of flow of the Salt Fork. And what is going to be happening is there's going to be variations of the depth of that river, and so this is really an environmental concern in addition to all the things that were mentioned. And the second is the economic aspect, and that economic aspect does hit what's going to happen to farmland and the subsidence that will come about when the mining is finished. And even though the mining is in Vermilion County, it still will affect us in Champaign County in relationship to the farming and all of the supportive attributes of farming that go on within our county, and since it's right on the border. So even though Homer, this is within the village of Homer and it's the business of the village of Homer, it does affect our whole county environmentally and economically, and it's on those arguments that I wanted to put on the agenda for discussion to see if we feel it is appropriate to write up a supportive resolution on for the folks in the village of Homer in relationship to the use of the water and what it will be doing to their village. And so I'd like to hear comments from others on the committee and see if there is a feeling that we should be moving forward and coming up with a resolution that then to move forward to the county board.
Okay, that's it. Astrid?
Well, I went to the first meeting in Homer where they had their lawyer on the phone, and I was absolutely horrified. He seems to be in on it. There is a clause that they agreed to.
The Homer attorney, you mean?
Yes, yes. And they agreed to a clause in it that Sunrise could transfer this whole project to a subsidiary or some other corporation anytime they wanted to, which is the standard way of disposing it. It means when there's nothing left but slag and holes in the ground and a slurry pond, then you transfer it to a subsidiary and allow it to go broke. And then Homer has to clean up this horrible mess, and Homer can't possibly clean it up. So it is a real concern for the county board. Any cleanup that's likely to be done will likely to be us. With the wind farm, they had to escrow the entire cost of cleaning up everything they did in the beginning before they could start. And, you know, it would be nice if Sunrise had to do that. I don't know, Cole has so many civil rights that I don't know whether we can do anything with them. But certainly there should be some defensive move to see that they can't leave too much filth.
Okay.
And to walk away from it.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that all the surfaces of the surface-related facilities are going to be over in Vermilion County. Not saying that there couldn't be future down the line cleanup needed, but as a Champaign County and as Homer is at this point in time is supplying water. Well, they shut down, you shut down that line, and worst comes to worst, you probably just abandon the line, cap it off at the village limit and abandon it and turn over the right of way back to maybe the landowners. They keep doing whatever they were doing on top of it. And Champaign County, all the surface related facilities are in Vermilion County. And I don't believe at this point in time they're proposing to even mine into Champaign County. They're going to stop at the property line. Technically, I don't see how we have anything to do with a cleanup at this point in time.
You mean they're getting the water from Homer and taking it over to Vermilion County
Correct.
to wash the coal?
Correct. All the surface facilities are going to be in Vermilion County.
That's correct. Any further? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, I kind of hate to get into a discussion about the Homer City Council and what they've done. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be judging what those elected officials in a municipality did or didn't do. That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, Astrid, you said that, and just for correction, not picking on you, but when it came to the windmills, we required a salvage value associated with reclamation or returning or, decommissioning the windmills associated. And that's a depreciated kind of a thing. But yes, we did have money in escrow put up before. You're correct about that, but it's not 100%. But
With the salvage value, it's 100%.
with the salvage value,
Right.
correct. Okay, just wanted to clarify for record, okay.
Nothing like that would be
That's,
with the mine.
that's right, that's a good point. Something you brought up, Patsy, about, and I read that same article in the News Gazette. Usually, from my old friend who's a biologist who's done a lot of surveys in the streams here in this community, and the gentleman, I served the Forest Preserve Board with him. And I got a real education from Ed. He's a very intelligent man, but for the health of any stream, the canary in the mine, since we're using the mine, is the mollusk. And I noticed that they're placing, and you mentioned that they're placing 2 endangered species of mollusk within the Salt Fork. And the reason, and you didn't mention too with the article, the reason they became endangered because I think the snail darter, or there's is that correct, one of the fish? That's one of the fish. Darter, that actually is endangered too, had left the Salt Fork. But there is another species of darter that still remains in the Salt Fork. And the mollusk are implanted through the gills of the fish moving throughout the stream. So I'm sure they'll propagate with the darter still within the stream. But there are, I think, 17 or 18 species of different mollusks within the Salt Fork. It's a very healthy river system. Actually, well,
Well, it's the main sewer outlet for Champaign.
well, one of them, Urbana, and then the Kaskaskia is the other one. And there's different species of mollusk in there too. But I think what separates this from, and you brought up the dump over at Clinton, is that if you look in the LRMP, the county board encourages mineral extraction and natural resource extraction within the county, obviously done a proper way. So I think when you said that this isn't setting precedents if we would decide to do some kind of non-impact resolution, I think the difference is we have it in the LRMP that we're encouraging this within the county. No matter, and I'm not an advocate of coal. I've really not have any past with coal, except I've got a cousin that farms some of the reclamation strip mines over west of Peoria. And I've been on those properties, and I've been down into the strip mines with the huge diggers and excavators and things like that, watching the land be torn up. But also, he and his father have been farming reclamation ground now for probably over a decade. And so that's basically what I know about it. And that was done with a lot different, less stringent requirements from EPA and other federal and state agencies. And there's a lot of mistakes made. And I don't want to open up this big discussion about coal or anything else, but I find it interesting that there's a lot of healthy concern about this, and there should be. But I think there's been a lot of misconceptions too about this.
Okay.
And I think the reason I bring that up is because, like I said, there's been a lot of changes in regulations when it comes to coal mining from federal and state. And the other thing too is I'm pretty sure Homer's in the same situation when it comes to water quality for their municipal water use, their water facilities, as all the other municipalities in the state of Illinois. And they're getting hammered with EPA regulations, the changing of how the water quality is graded. I know for me locally, Sodorus is working with that gentleman back there, and so is the city of Seymour, to try and improve their, and he could probably come up here. You can, we won't open that can of worms up, and describe to you all the requirements are coming down. And in a community like Sodorus, $200,000 for 400 people, I don't know where that's going to come from to try and upgrade their water facilities. And that's what's being required throughout all rural Illinois. So because of federal EPA coming down with their water quality standards, and they're trying to get the state of Illinois to get up to what their standards are, and it's a moving target. But these small communities can't afford it. They're going to go broke in stores trying to fix that water facility. I mean, the water rates are gonna go sky high, and I know it's gonna happen in Seymour, and they're unincorporated. Like a lot of these small communities, if they're not tied in with American Water System or American Water Company, they're gonna get hammered. And they've gotta do it, or that's it, they're gonna get shut down. So I would imagine Homer's got the same issues. So what do? You raise taxes? We're taxed enough in this state. And to find out from the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, nobody reported this, but 2 states out of 50 in this nation in the last 3 months have declined economically. And this is number 1, Illinois. And we're losing taxpayers in the last 15 years, 1 taxpayer every 15 seconds we're losing. We're just getting hammered. Nobody can afford anything anymore. We can't even keep restaurants in these small communities anymore. And that's going back to the old analogy, the canary in the mine. Those little small town restaurants and businesses are the canary of the mine, the economic health of these small communities, and they're dropping like flies. So I'm not sure with the the land resource management plan that we have that advocates this to a certain degree. And I can't see how we can do anything about this.
Go ahead. You said a lot of things the right way, and Aaron's right. The mines in Vermilion County, we don't have a thing to say about it, but is there anything, I mean, I've been contacted by several of the farmers and people in Champaign County that are, they're a mile away from the mine. Is there anything about your own wells? I mean, most of those wells are dug wells south of Homer. I did not realize that. So they're fairly shallow. I mean, what if you have contamination? I mean, that's a concern. I have some friends on the southeast corner of Chinook Base that have had water hauled to them or paid for by the government because their wells are contaminated. I mean, it's not a village or anything. And is there anything to back up these companies to protect your own? I mean, I got a drilled well at home. I'm drilled well, but
Contamination from where are those states?
well, I don't know.
Because
When
usually
they wash this coal, I have concerns about that. I don't know.
Because usually dug wells are 20, 30 feet.
Yeah.
Dad's got one at his place, and that's his main water source, and it's
Yeah.
28 feet.
I'm not a hydrologist or anything like that. I don't know, yeah. Because they had a lot of wells go dry south of Homer.
Marie Antoinette, let them drink beer.
Well, I think it's a concern we're gonna have to keep an eye on, my own opinion. I mean, Aaron and I have been to some of the meetings, and I've told you guys before, I've been contacted by several people down that way, so. And Village of Ogden, they're sitting on good water, but a quarter mile east of town, you have the town of Fithian pulling water, a mile and a half, or a mile and a quarter west of town, Homer's pulling water, so if I was the Village of Ogden, I'd be a little concerned about everybody using their water. But I think it's things we have to consider. I don't know, you've been in the coal mine. I don't know. Do those guys worry about contamination from washing all that stuff? Or?
Well, I've been underground. I haven't worked for a coal company. I've been concerned with the geology of the coal. They're concerned. I'm sure they're concerned about staying in business and staying out of the grip of the authorities. But I would like to point out or comment, county jurisdiction goes to the grassroots. In other words, these things at depth we can't really touch very much. We can talk about it. Yeah. Sounds good, and that's what the committee's for, talk. I didn't know what other jurisdictions were. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of things, and if the committee would give me permission to ask the people in the audience, I can't remember where the slurry pond is going to be placed. Do you mind if I ask somebody out there? Can somebody tell me where the slurry pond is going to be placed? Do you want to go to the microphone so it's on the record? thank you. I should know, but I don't.
The slurry pond and the surface facility will all be located in Vermilion County. You are correct on that.
Okay.
May I elaborate a little bit?
Is that a final decision, or is that the current?
That is the plan as it is presented in the current permit application.
It's been put into a permit and all
There's,
that kind of
yeah,
stuff?
there's 400 acres of surface prime farmland that has been purchased 4 miles south and 2 miles east of Homer, where the surface facility will be located. There's an additional 100 acres of land that has been purchased near the railroad just east of Homer that they would like to develop for the railroad terminal. There has been land leased from the surface facility to this site, but there are landowners between there that have not sold out, and they have blocked their railroad spur to this point. So we don't know how they're going to have to figure out how to transport that coal from the site to either the railroad or have to go to a trucking operation instead. At this point, if the landowners are able to keep their land, that would force them to go into a trucking situation, which then would tax the roads, which would be roads in both Vermilion County, and then if they go to Route 49, it would bring them into roads into Champaign County. And just to add to that, even though the surface facility is located in Vermilion County, the FOIA information that we have received shows that Homer has requested engineering studies for the water to wash the coal, and that water would potentially put the withdrawal at the Salt Fork River in Champaign County at Route 49 with a pipe coming out on the southwest corner. That pipe would run down Route 49 and go past Homer and then go east out to the mine. So Champaign County does have a vested interest and can be involved in that water withdrawal at the Salt Fork if they stay with that plan.
Thank you very much for those clarification points. The other one that I do want to overlay, that's still being a bid between Illinois and Iowa as to who's going to ante up on the incentives. But if the fertilizer plant gets placed down in that area, the draw is going to be also from the Salt Fork, and so.
Wait a second.
Whoa, there are two
No,
items
it's
here.
not.
First of all, this isn't on the
And
agenda.
That's right, we're not talking about that, and it is not, Miss Petrie. I was at a meeting, and it is not. It would be the Kaskaskia, or they're gonna pipe effluent right out of the sanitary district. It will not come out of the Salt Fork.
Plant's going to be in Tuscola.
It will be in Douglas County, Tuscola.
Oh, I thought it was coming
It was a
from the
very
Salt Fork.
sketchy article.
It was just the level of the Salt Fork is what I'm focusing on.
That item isn't on the agenda, so let's just let it wait. There'll be plenty of time to talk about that. Any more?
No, I just hope that we can keep this as open to discussion as things move along in relationship to what the mine will be doing and looking at it in relationship to what will be happening to the land. It's fine that it's in the LRMP to encourage this kind of economic development, but also in the LRMP is the protection of our farmland. And so if there is going to be anything that takes away from the value of our farmland, I think we need to keep that in mind as this, I hope will just stay on the table for some additional discussion.
Bring it up next week. Okay, is that it? All right, item C, consideration of amending the Champaign County zoning ordinance to work with HB 2615 Illinois Hydraulic Fracturing Regulatory Act. Do we have it?
That's me again.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, Mr. Kurtz actually took a number of the notes. This came up when we had the Zone 3 meeting, was that about 10 days ago? And Kelly Murray brought this to the attention of all the various members of county boards within Zone 3. Bringing to our attention HB 2615 that is moving through the House right now, and suggesting strongly that the county boards keep an eye on this. And in addition, she strongly urged that county boards position themselves to be ready, should this pass, to put forth some amendments for their county zoning to handle what comes out of this bill. So I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, that this was discussed at the Zone 3 meeting.
Okay. Anybody else?
John's looking puzzled.
Clarify, Zone 3, what zones, what are you talking about?
Zone 3 is, well, I couldn't find a map of the state, but the Illinois Association of County Boards, you know, has the state zoned, and the Zone 3 meeting was held here in our facility a week ago. Thank you for the date, appreciate that. And there were, I think, 4 of us from the county board who attended, Mr. Maxwell, Mr. Richards, Mr. Kurtz, and myself. And this was one of the items that was discussed among other bills going through our legislature. But this one sort of got a little bit more attention, and I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention on this committee, because if in fact it does get passed, it will fall under our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Well, just a point of clarification, Patsy, if I may. With this, if this act does get passed, would it take precedent, I mean, at the state level, would that take precedent over, I mean, the regulations that it sets in place, that would, I'm assuming, would take precedent over what you had in your individual counties? I mean, so, I mean, obviously, maybe we would need to update our zoning stuff, maybe, but ultimately, though, the state would be the one setting the regulations, so that even if our wording, I mean, it comes into, this is just say, it comes into effect tomorrow. Well, we don't get it updated tomorrow, but their regulations are what are in place, so ultimately, it still goes back to their regulations.
I think you have a firm grasp on our position in the pecking order.
Well, I think it's that, that's number one. And number two, it depends on how it's written, and if it's written such that a county could make it more stringent, but not less stringent than how the statute gets written. And the other is to make certain that whatever is in a county zoning ordinance, it does parallel what comes out of the bill. But I think those are the key things that Kelly Murray was bringing to our attention, and just sort of giving all the people in attendance a heads up on it.
So what it sounds like, yeah, maybe there would be something that doesn't quite jive between ours and the new regulation, but it wouldn't be needing to just jump in there and get that done immediately to get it changed.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments? I believe that brings us to the chair's report. The chair's report is he's greatly relieved at the speed with which we got through this meeting. Now, the gentleman that came in late, if you had been in here on time, would you have been in the public input?
Yes, I would have.
Do you guys mind listening to him? Step up and.
Well, thank you for the offer, first of all, and thanks to the members of the Environmental Land Use Committee. I'm a long-time opponent of the. Am I on?
He needs to state his name.
Yeah, okay. My name is Scott Dossett, and I live at 501 East High Street in Urbana. And I've been working with groups that oppose the Bulldog Mine in Vermilion County. And I'd just like to second a couple of the points that Sue Smith made prior. We are talking about a potential significant withdrawal from the Salt Fork. And I'm also concerned about overland flow from the wash ponds. Mines and Minerals at the state level will decide whether or not this plan meets their muster. But certainly some of the sheet flow drainage from those areas, should dikes fail in those ponds, are going to come back toward the Salt Fork and toward Champaign County. So I would just ask, as Ms. Petrie accented toward the end, that you keep an eye on this issue and be open to input from citizens that are concerned about water quality issues, air quality issues, road infrastructure issues related to the transport of the coal out of the mine. Thank you. Questions or comments?
That's about the only thing we don't question. Okay, items on the consent agenda, I believe, are 7A and B, B and C. B and C, the rest of it. Okay. If nobody has any complaints, I declare this meeting adjourned.